This year will be the first year in a very long time where I've not created a standalone desk setup video. And that's because, well, my desk still looks basically the same. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it is still the same. Like, the desk itself hasn't changed, most of the peripherals are the same too, but that being said, there are actually a heap of accessories that weren't around in my last desk setup video, and so I thought, why not create a sort of desk setup accessories video instead? So that's what we're doing. Let's start with the most obvious change, the monitor. This is the Koikon G32P, and aside from it being a 32-inch 6K monitor, the fun part is that it actually has a virtually identical design to the Apple Pro Display XDR. I actually did a full video on this monitor last month, so I'll link that up in the cards if you want to check it out. But to sum up, it is a seriously awesome monitor for the price and has been a worthy inclusion in my editing desk setup. I will say, switching to a non-ultra-wide monitor for the first time in over 5 years has taken quite a bit of adjusting to, so I'm still tossing up on whether I'm going to keep using this long-term in this setup, but even if it doesn't stay at my editing station, I will absolutely find a use for it somewhere else in the studio. But then moving slightly up a bit, after quite a few setups without any sort of light bar above the monitor, I've just recently started using this BenQ Halo Screen Bar 2, and I've got to say, this one is seriously awesome. It comes with this beautifully designed controller, but it also has a proximity feature built in, meaning whenever it detects that I'm not in the near vicinity for an extended period of time, it'll turn itself off, but then whenever I come back, it'll switch itself back on. And this feature alone makes this version 2 worth the money, but then being able to also control the light's intensity and even its color temperature using this dial is seriously killer. And just the ambient lighting it provides in and of itself is enough to make this an amazing accessory for my desk, but it also now has this rear lighting element built in as well, which I honestly love. I used to have a pair of Govee light bars behind the monitor, which worked fairly well, but for the amount of real estate they took up on the back of the monitor for what was actually a relatively low light output, I've got to say, I think I prefer the Halo Screen Bar. It may not look as clean from the front, but it's much better as far as providing ambient light goes. All right, moving to below the monitor now, and next up is potentially my favorite purchase of 2025, this Stream Deck Plus. Now, you might remember that I was previously using the Loop Deck CT, but honestly, towards the start of this year, they actually released an update that essentially killed a lot of third-party plugins, and the plugins were already few and far between anyway, so for a while, I actually switched back to my old Stream Deck Mini, but then after loving getting back into that ecosystem of plugins so much, I decided to take the plunge and upgrade to this Stream Deck Plus, and man, I freaking love this thing. Initially, this right here was the main setup that I was using on a daily basis, but then not too long after upgrading, I went down a huge Home Assistant rabbit hole, which I've got set up on my main PC via the Docker app, and I ended up setting up this completely new page here that essentially controls every smart device in my studio. I've got a button that turns on or off every studio light and then opens or closes the blinds at the same time. But then I've also got individual lighting controls too. There's also a button to turn on and off my aircon or switch between cooling and heating. And there's even an option here to activate the robot vacuum I have in my studio so that it starts a cleaning cycle. Honestly, this is the page that it lives on for about 95% of the time, but I do occasionally come back to this page here to start a screen recording or to open up local send for sharing files wirelessly between devices, for example. But either way, I've loved having all of these controls within arm's reach over the past year. And that's just the Stream Deck side of things. If you look underneath it, you'll actually see that I also opted to pick up this USB hub add-on, which gives you a bunch of extra USB ports at the back. But the main feature that I use this for is for transferring footage via this SD card slot. Now, I will say it doesn't offer the fastest transfer speed, so just keep that in mind. But having the combo of all these controls available, as well as removing the need for a separate USB hub, like I said, I just love this thing. Then another amazing accessory that I've been using for about a month now is this beautifully designed volume control knob. And I'm gonna be honest, before this, I've been attempting to use a different volume control knob by Fozzy called the Vol 20, but the battery only ever lasted like a week or two, and the Bluetooth connection was super unreliable. Well, this volume knob, which is actually called the VK01 and is actually made by the same guys who made the Koikon monitor, it has been infinitely more reliable. For one, I charged this thing once when it arrived about a month ago and haven't had to since, but then more importantly, I opted to go for the 2.4G variant, meaning it comes with a little USB dongle, and as a result, the connection has been flawless making it so much more reliable. It now sits right next to my keyboard here, which not only looks really cool and suits the vibe of my setup perfectly, but you really cannot beat having a tactile way like this to adjust audio levels on the fly, rather than having to use clunky keyboard shortcuts. And yes, I do have a volume knob set up on my Stream Deck Plus as well, but given where it's situated, having something just literally right within a small hand movement's reach, it has been just so useful. Also just recently picked up this super inexpensive pen, and you might be thinking, yo Sam, we don't need to know about your pens, but hear me out for a sec, because this ain't just a regular old pen. It's actually a 6-in-1 pen because it has your standard ballpoint for writing, but then it also has a ruler built in, a spirit level, then on the end here is a stylus, which I actually use quite a lot, believe it or not. Then if you unscrew the stylus end, you also get a Phillips head screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver if you flip it around. Plus it fits this section in my Grove made mouse pad beautifully. So honestly, I love this inexpensive pen and I highly recommend it. Now, this e-ink display is another accessory that I've been using for a couple of months. It's called the Terminal, and the folks behind Terminal actually reached out a while back asking if they could sponsor a video on the channel. But here's the truth of the matter. Even though this video might be sponsored by them, this thing would still be getting a feature in this video regardless, because I genuinely love having it on my desk. If you haven't heard of it, it's essentially been built to deliver you glanceable information without the distraction that might otherwise come from getting the same information from a phone. You just use their super simple dashboard on a computer to select from a list of what they call plugins, and there's a long yet continuously growing list of first-party and third-party options available. But once you've made your selections and added them to your playlist, and then taken the time to get them set up, your terminal display will then show those plugins periodically throughout the day. I've got my display set to the max refresh rate, so the plugins change every 5 minutes. And even with this setting, I can still get up to 40 days of battery life off a single charge, which is wild, but you can extend that to over 400 days of battery life if you lower the refresh rate to every 60 minutes. In terms of plugins, I've got 5 favorites at the moment, including this Days Left This Year plugin, which I just reckon looks so clean. But then there's also this weather plugin, a YouTube stats plugin, a Gumroad sales plugin, and finally a Coin Market Cap plugin that I use to keep an eye on the fluctuating price of Ethereum. But yeah, big shout out to the Terminal team for sponsoring this video. I'll leave a link to their website below, so go and show them some love by checking them out. Okay, so up to this point, I've just been talking about all these additional accessories that I've added to the setup, some of which have replaced other accessories, but others of which have just been added on top of what was already there. But there are a couple of new accessories that I've added that have also helped to clean things up too. The biggest of which is this in-desk power solution. If you watched my previous desk setup video, then you'll know that I was using an on-desk power clamp, and whilst it was good, it was a little too beefy for my liking, and I only ever used one of the plugs, so I ended up buying one of these much more minimal in-desk solutions instead. And yes, you've got to buy a massive 80mm drill bit to cut the hole so that the thing fits, and honestly, it does take a fair amount of courage to cut a hole that big in your expensive desktop, but let me tell you, it is well worth it for how sleek and minimal the end result is. I've also switched pretty much all of my USB cables to these retractable variants, which is honestly such a great move if you like having cables within arm's reach, but you don't want messy cables all over the place. I initially started with these pretty inexpensive Cable Matters variants, but I've also got a bunch of these Faz Gear options too, and I even recently picked up a couple of these CarPlay branded ones, which are pretty sleek looking. They all work really well though, and as I said, they're amazing for keeping your desk clean without losing out on having quick access to charging your devices or connecting your accessories to your computer, for example. And speaking of accessories connected to the computer, one that you can't even see on this desk setup, but that is honestly up there as another favorite of mine, is my new NAS. You see, up until about 6 months ago, I was using a Synology DS220 Plus system, which worked really well, but even though I originally thought that 18 terabytes would be more than enough for my workflow, well, it turned out not to be the case, because I'd been hovering at about the 18 terabyte mark for well over a year, often having to go in and clear out storage to keep up. So I eventually decided to upgrade my system, and to make the switch as seamless as possible, I opted to go for another Synology system, this time the much beefier DS925 Plus NAS. My unit came with 2 NVMe SSDs plus 4 16 terabyte Synology Plus series hard drives, giving me a total of 42 terabytes of usable space, which I've configured in an SHR configuration for redundancy purposes. And this means that if any disk fails, all my data is safe and I just need to replace the failed drive and everything will carry on no problem. Now, back in my old office, I had the system set up to back up just once a week on a Friday afternoon, which would usually take several hours. But since upgrading to this new setup, I have it set to continuous backup. And honestly, guys, it is ridiculous just how fast the thing is. It is connected via Ethernet, so that does help speed things up considerably. But for example, I can transfer like 20 gigabytes of footage off an SD card to my SSD, and within a few additional minutes, all that footage is backed up to the NAS, safe and sound. And honestly, if you've been on the fence regarding getting yourself a NAS, let me tell you, just take the plunge. I mean, not only does it give you incredible peace of mind should your computer's hard drives ever get corrupt or your PC gets inadvertently wiped, but it is just genuinely so much better and so much more convenient than storing data on old external hard drives that become impossible to keep track of as time goes on. Now, I will just quickly add, for another extra layer of security, I also have a Backblaze account, which is also constantly backing up literally every file I've ever created on my computer to their cloud servers. And this is just in the rare event that, let's say, my studio gets completely destroyed alongside my NAS and my computer, Backblaze holds a completely digital copy of everything fully removed from my studio, which means I'll be able to restore everything once I get back on my feet. So that means I'm following the basic 3-2-1 backup rule where I've got 3 copies of my data, the original stored on my computer, a backup stored on a different type of media, which is my NAS, and a third offsite copy, which is my Backblaze cloud backup. Now, I could and probably should use Synology's C2 service instead of Backblaze, but I've been using Backblaze for years at this point, and it's been fantastic. And let's be honest, I'm just too lazy to make the switch right now. But there you have it. Those are the desk setup accessories that I've upgraded over the past year. And honestly, I've been seriously stoked with every single one, and I don't see myself switching them out anytime soon. If there's anything you saw throughout the video that I didn't discuss in this video, then check out my last desk setup video, because if it wasn't mentioned in this video, then it was definitely mentioned in that one. Aside from that, if you enjoyed the video, then a sub would be hugely appreciated. But that's it. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.